Why are we talking about test taking and preparation? Obviously, your tests will help determine your grades, but we also want to help you become better studiers and better test takers. These skills don't magically appear, they can be learned. Before you take an exam, normally you study. Exam studying is a good example of where working smart will help you learn more and get higher grades. The first principle of better studying is, what should you study? For many professors, the answer is everything. You can study textbook readings, handouts, class notes, paper assignments, and previous tests. All of these materials will help you gain a deeper background of knowledge in your subject. The second principle we'll look at is, how should you study? This relies somewhat on your own multiple intelligences. In the last episode, we talked about memory and retention skills in reading, and a lot of the habits you form for reading also apply to studying for exams. If you learn how you best study and what sort of environment you need, a quiet place, a noisy place, outdoors, or with music, you will be more comfortable and you'll be taking advantage of your own study personality. Some people do well with visual aids such as flashcards, or they need to highlight text with colored markers. Other people need peace and quiet where they can focus on the text like a laser beam. Learn what's best for you. The third principle, and the most important one for studying for exams, is when to study. There are a few people like Mozart who can hear music once and remember it, and some students with photographic memories who can read something once and remember it. But 99% of us are not Mozarts. For most of you, if you remember one single piece of information from this episode, you should know this. The dumbest way to study is to cram everything into your brain the night before. Allow me to repeat this. The dumbest way to study is to cram everything into your brain the night before. You are not a robot. This is an inefficient and wasteful way to study. Work smart. Wearing yourself out the night before and then complaining to your friends how stressed you are and how hard you're working is stupid and wasteful. The exam paper does not care how hard you worked. It cares about the answers you write on it. If I sound condescending in saying these things, it's because I see students here making the same error over and over and over. They use a teaspoon instead of a power shovel in studying. The amount of time you spend studying means almost nothing. What means everything is how efficiently you study. For most people, the best way to study efficiently is to develop a regular habit of reviewing your notes and materials. You can do this after every class, every evening, or even at a set time every weekend. Study daily. In just 5 to 10 minutes a day, review each course looking at notes and assignments. Study weekly. As time allows, spend 1 hour each weekend to review each subject you're studying. Pre-exam study. Before a test, do a major review. You're covering several weeks' worth of material. Human beings aren't always as rational and logical as we like to think we are. We usually don't think in the long term. But if you do the arithmetic, a small amount of studying every day or every week added up is still less than 8 hours of frantic studying the night before the test. The person who has a regular routine of review and study really doesn't have to study much for tests. It's already done. So while the stupid student is going crazy, the smart student is relaxing and still getting better grades. If I can say it again, the dumbest way to study is to cram everything into your brain the night before. Your body isn't a machine. It needs rest and sleep so that you can think clearly during the exam. A personal note. Once when I was an undergraduate, I went out the night before an exam and decided that I wouldn't drink beer. I would drink coffee all evening because of the test. I should have just had the beer. I ended up lying awake all night because of the caffeine, and I was exhausted during the test. Of course, coming to the exam hungover is no better. Some of your mother's advice is probably correct. Get a good sleep and a solid breakfast before the exam. Treat your body well and it will treat you well during the test.
We're going to look for a moment at the act of taking a test and some strategies that you can use to help yourself more successfully navigate different types of tests. It's recommended that you develop a routine, one that's familiar and comfortable to you, for when you take tests. Routines help you make sense of an otherwise nervous event. If you have a routine and maintain it firmly, you'll probably reduce the number of things that you need to worry about, and therefore free up your own thinking to let you focus on the test questions themselves instead of worrying about what exactly to do next. First of all, you need to arrive on time. This is obvious, but it does require mentioning. Jot down memory cues is like what we mentioned in a previous episode when we said the phrase brain dump. As soon as you get your test paper in the margin, jot down the memory cues you've been using as you studied. That way you won't forget them during the test, and you can simply go back and reference this list that you've written whenever you need. Survey the test and let yourself plan out the amount of time you might need for each section. Notice how many questions are multiple choice, whether there are questions which require a little more writing, and give yourself enough time to do each one. Remember how long your class period is and count up the questions. So as you plan the time that you use for each question, periodically you can also check the clock. You don't want to make yourself too nervous, of course, but you do want to be sure that you don't spend too much time and get stuck on one question. Of course, it is very simple, but we must remind you to read the directions. It's very important. Too many students across time and space have lost points because they simply didn't read the directions. You may have a great, fabulous sounding answer, but if it doesn't fit the question or the instructions, you may as well not have done it. We recommend these tips during the test. First, start with the easy questions, not only because you can quickly finish them, but also because they give you a little bit of a confidence booster. Once you finish them and you know you're able to do something successfully, you'll have more energy to finish the entire test. If you find that one question in particular is taking too long to answer, stop, take a break, and go to something else. Mostly, when professors grade tests, they only count up your correct answers, but they don't penalize you for wrong ones. So give it a try. Overall, try to maintain a positive attitude and don't feel overwhelmed. You need as much energy as you can to finish the test. Finally, if you have some spare time at the end of the test, try to go back and check your work. Be sure there's nothing you missed, turn over every page, and after you get the test with the grades, again, check your work. See what it was that you got right or wrong. Find out if there's anything you need to review, if there's a later test. Try to learn from your mistakes. Even make an appointment with your professor if you need to, and discuss with them what it was exactly that was incorrect about your answer, and have them explain to you so you can better understand for the future. You're going to take a short test of questions to help you think about how you study for and mentally prepare yourself for tests. Get a sheet of paper and give yourself a few minutes to answer these questions. Try to be honest with yourself. Pause the video if you need to. As soon as you finish, look back at your answers and see if you can compile a few ideas. Jot down a few notes about what you could do to help yourself study better for the future. Your own best method for preparing for tests may change. You may develop new habits. Your strong intelligence may shift from year to year. You may simply learn new strategies, or perhaps it depends on the test or the particular subject that you're taking a test for. So be prepared to change and adapt as needed. Now, we're going to take a look at a few strategies for objective tests and how you can make yourself more successful at these. These are some tips for true-false quizzes. Obviously, quizzes that have only a true or a false answer. Let's say, assuming that you studied, okay, you're probably going to know the answer. But what if you don't know the answer, or the wording is a little confusing? Well, use these strategies to help you. Remember, because a question on a true-false test has only two possible answers, you have a 50% chance of getting it right. Statement number 1 says, if it contains absolute words, it may be false. Assume it's false. Absolute words are words like always, never, invariably, none, no one, all, everyone. Usually, questions that have these words will be wrong. Also, if any part of the sentence is not true, and you know that, then mark it false. For example, let's say you hear the statement on a test, Professor Shirley, Professor Eckert, and Professor Hall are all from the United States. But let's say you recall hearing Professor Eckert mention Canada several times. You probably figure he's from Canada, so you would know this is a false statement. All right, get another sheet of paper, and we're going to take a short true-false quiz. Don't worry so much about if you're right or wrong, but see if you think you can figure out the answer using the strategies. Time to check your answers. Did the strategies help you? Multiple choice tests. Here are some tips. This kind of test has 3 parts. The question itself is the stem. A, B, C, D, your choices, are the options. Among those, only one is correct. The incorrect ones are called distractors because their job is to distract you from the correct answer. Here's a few extra tips that are not on the screen. 1. If one of the answers says all of the above, that's usually the correct answer. If one answer seems more complete or seems to have more information, it's probably the correct answer. If 2 answers are similar, the answer is likely to be one of these 2. If it says something like always, all, or never, that's probably a clue that it's incorrect. Many people think that unknown words indicate something is the right answer, but this usually isn't true. When guessing, you're usually choosing the right answer if it is something familiar to you, because that probably means it's jogging your memory. Finally, if it's a list of numbers, usually the middle choice is the right answer. Of course, there is no substitute for simply studying well and knowing the correct answer, but these tips can help you. Another type of objective test is the fill in the blank. I'm sure you've seen plenty of these too. Sometimes you may be choosing something from a list. Sometimes you may have to recall the answer entirely from memory and write it down. But it's okay. Pay attention to these tips and you can probably do well. First, it says decide what kind of answer is needed. Is it a date, a name, a place, or some other kind of information? Look at the sentence and decide what type of information is missing. Next, if you're having to fill in blanks and there is a potential box of answers and the statement is missing a verb, that's a clue. So you could scan the box of possible answers to find verbs and see if they fit into the sentence. Last, scan the statement for keywords. If you do this and then you find the topic which is needed, you'll be able to jog your memory. The standardized test, something I'm sure you're familiar with. Standardized test is something like the Sunan or the SAT. Some of these strategies here are things you might do before the test day when you're studying, and others are things you do during the test itself. As always, awareness and knowledge are key to helping you prepare well. It's always good to get rest and good food. You don't want to be sleepy or distracted by your growling stomach during a test. That's not going to help you concentrate, and you're simply going to feel miserable. If you don't have a chance to walk out of the room and stretch, at least shift your weight in your chair so you don't get stuck sitting in one position and feeling uncomfortable. Plan so you have extra time to go back and check your answers too. Perhaps the most difficult test for some people is the open-ended test, where you have much freedom in how you answer. However, there are still strategies that you can use to help yourself get better at these. Check for directions. What type of test is it? Are you writing a brief answer, such as a paragraph or less? Is it an essay, or is it exactly a paragraph? On the next slide, you'll see Bloom's taxonomy of cognition. It's an order of types of thinking that may be requested on some of these essay tests. So you have to look at the test and consider what kind of thinking it's asking you for as you plan your answer. And there will be cues in the question that help you figure that out. Assuming you have some spare paper, try to jot notes there and plan your answer before you write the real answer on the real test paper. You can see from item number 1, knowledge. That's simply looking at facts which are known and can be proven. But as you go up the scale to number 6, you have more complex types of thinking. If you see a question which says, describe or discuss K-pop's popularity in Southeast Asia, you know you should do some sort of analysis. Look at various factors about K-pop or about the countries that are near Korea or Korea itself and so on, which have helped K-pop to be so popular in Southeast Asia. In a similar way, look at the other statements here in this taxonomy and get an understanding of what is asked of you when you see a statement or question such as this on an essay test. A few more tips to help you answer essay questions with confidence. As always, read carefully and be sure you understand. Look for any instruction words which guide you on how to structure or what to say in your answer. If you're not sure, you may also take a moment to skip to another part of the test and come back. Essay questions generally take a little bit more time to plan. Concentrate on being brief and precise first of all, and then you can, as needed, add extra information. Let's look now at a sample essay question. The word illustrate asks us to show our definition by providing examples which help the reader understand. A few final thoughts on preparing and taking tests. Reflect when you have some quiet time. Try to mentally review your answers that you gave and assess how confident you feel about it. Don't panic and frantically search through your textbook, but give yourself some time to think about what you wrote. If you feel a strong concern about one part of the test, well, make a note about it. You may even decide to make an appointment with your professor in order to discuss that part of the test. Take a moment to carefully review it. You spent a lot of time filling out that test. Notice any patterns and things that you were successful at or not so successful at, and make a plan for what's coming up, any future tests or assignments that you have. There may be a specific type of question that you're not very good at, but you decide to practice and help yourself get better. Finally, good luck.
One of the easiest ways for you to quickly bump up your grades is to review your test when you get it back. If you look at the grade and throw away the test, you are blowing an opportunity to review not only the material but how you take tests. When you look at your exam paper, do you see patterns of errors you make? Do you get hung up on a certain type of question and rush past others? You don't need to do this all day. But if you spend a few minutes looking at what you wrote on the test and what the professor wrote in response, you will improve your grades. This is especially so, if I can show my bias, in composition courses, where the professor usually writes notes and corrections about your English. It's a fool who ignores such personalized help. So don't be a fool. Take a few minutes and it will pay off for you later. Remember?